a deep sense of closure and finality with this episode of Grimgar, the party finally obtaining vengeance for Manato's death. And that scene in the second half of the episode, as they stood, in front of Manato's grave, among the tombstones in the snow. Haruhiro's speech, the depth to those words, dude, and seeing the emotions and the feels running high as they finally say goodbye to their nakama. And they hand him the badge and lay it on top of his tombstone. The music playing the ED at that moment. I'm going to dive into this scene in depth, but the sound direction, just the characters' expressions, and the attention to detail. It feels as though the entirety of the journey of Grimgar thus far is really starting to come to fruition with the incredible pacing. Even though a lot of people see it as slow and very slow-paced and unbearable in that way, I've loved every second of it, and it's been so intricate and so detail-oriented that the payoff is absolutely beautiful with an episode like this, which, to me, is probably one of the best episodes of Grimgar thus far. So,灰と幻想のグリムガル, Episode 8. Before I dive into anything, I'm hearing from the light novel readers that this episode concludes Volume 1 of the light novels. And that's crazy to me, and at the same time makes perfect sense with how detail-oriented, like I said, this series has been, and how slow-paced and intricate that it's been, dude. All across the board with the formal aspects, I've fallen deeply in love with Grimgar. But I can't think of any light novel adaptation that has taken 8 episodes out of a 12-episode core to adapt 1 volume of the light novel. It's impressive, dude, and I'm really curious to see where we go from here, because this episode showcases just how far the party has come. Think back to episode 1, okay, and think about what we actually accomplished with this episode. The very beginning of this series, it took all 6 of them, granted they were just starting out, to go up against one lone goblin who was weak. And in this episode, the tactics, the synergy of the party, them all going in, everybody adhering to their roles, no faltering, none of them, giving up in any instance. And there was such a tense battle throughout, dude, and I was worried, because at any given moment, after Manato's death, I've steeled myself for somebody else potentially dying. And when Yume got stabbed, I was like, yo, when Mary got shot in the back with the crossbow arrow by the same fiendish little goblin that took out Manato, I was legitimately worried. And for everyone in the party, because at any second, something could have gone wrong, because as Haruhiro noted, these goblins they were familiar with human tactics. They were battle-hardened. They even knew how to counter Shihoru's magic, the shadow magic that was putting that larger goblin that Mogu was going in against asleep. And just think about that for a second, that large blue-black goblin that was leading them, how advanced and how much more powerful they are compared to that very first goblin that they faced. And they were taking on the whole horde of them as a party. It just really showcases, like I said, and Haruhiro saying those words over Manato's grave, showing him, just like he said to the illusion of him that was appearing before him, that he wanted to show him how their party has grown and what the party has become. And it was absolutely amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So, diving into that scene, let's start at the beginning of the episode, actually. Let's start at the beginning of the episode. And we're going to talk about this throughout the review. My goddess Mary. After this arc, I will say this right now, Mary and Yume are tied for my best girl, and I think Mary is slightly surpassing her. And the fact of the matter is, she's coming in between the previous OTP of Haruhiro X Yume. And I'm actually okay with that, because I think this pairing, and I can see Haruhiro catching the feels for Mary. It's obvious with that final scene. But Mary as well. From the very beginning of the episode, dude, with the whole speech that Haruhiro gives before they begin this raid and the operation to retrieve the dagger, to avenge Manato, and clear out this city once and for all. As he's saying, if I were alone, I'd be more reckless and everything like that. I'd just charge in there. I know that's not like me, but I refuse to let anybody else die at this stage. And Mary follows that up by saying, but you're not alone. And I refuse to let any of my nakama die in front of me again either. And the fact that she was calling him Haru, dude, And I love how Ronto went off on it, dude. The comedy in this scene where Ronto's just like, what is this? Who's Hal? Who the fuck is Hal? What is this? And I'm just like, yo, you see that kind of familiarization, the dialogue throughout, and we'll talk about the final scene later on in the review, but very clearly. And the way that she looked back at Haruhiro before they began the operation, I was done since then. I was like, yo, clearly she's caught the feels for this man, which is strange to me coming off of the fact that so many light novel readers told me in that last scene that they skipped over the fact that she actually chose Mogu when Ronto was joking around about which one of the three she would choose. But regardless of that, I mean, I kind of felt this coming, and I like the direction that it's going in, dude. But that aside, going into the battle with the goblins, I want to talk about two things with this. Everybody played their part tremendously, dude. Mogu going in, tanking everything, going up against that gigantic goblin, dude. And seeing Mogu's personality shift, even Haruhiro points it out, where he's basically like, this is nothing, I'm as tough as I can be, and he's just going in, dude. I was just like, yo, Mogu is a fucking savage, man. You see Shihoru making sure, putting herself in danger to make sure her magic lands, and she's able to, use the shadow magic to put that particular goblin to sleep and let Mogu use the domo slash. He takes it out. Yume and Haruhiro with the tag team going in, and when Yume got stabbed, like I said, I was like, damn. But immediately, Mary comes in, trades places with Haruhiro, aggro, takes the whole aggro of the goblins in that area towards her, especially the blue goblin, and uses that time for Haruhiro to counter and heals, Yume up, heals Mogu up, everything, going according to plan. The tactics were insane, and it really showcases, like I said, how far they've developed as a party and individually. Ronto going in, closing the gap, and at the same time making space with his new abilities. Still really want to see Ronto's little demon familiar, because we have really yet to dive into that, and that's something that I've been really curious about. But still, he was beasting. He was going in like an absolute savage. Everybody playing their part, everyone going in this battle, and it was beautiful to see. But that's the thing. After Mary got shot by that little fiendish goblin with the crossbow, and that's the only goblin I don't give a shit about. You saw him at the very beginning before the fight started too, kind of clowning around, aiming at one of his partners and whatnot, and chuckling about it. And I was just like, this little fiend right here. And once it was revealed that was the one that killed Manato, dude. And Haruhiro chased him down, tossing the cloak out of the window to draw his fire, dashing in, and when he stabbed him, granted it was really Yume calling out to him that saved him at the end there, but when he stabbed him in the neck with his original dagger, and I hope he starts to dual wield those, man. Still no insight into that kind of, Deathline's RYOUGI SHIKI ability that he developed last episode, but regardless of that, it felt so satisfying, especially because I was disgusted with that goblin that was choking at his neck. But immediately after that, we get the interlude, in the little interlude frame, we see the large, blue-black goblin sitting there, kindly petting these bunny-like creatures. And I'm just like, God damn, this show is incredible. This series is beautiful because the way that it humanized these goblins to the point where I actually felt bad after seeing that once again, and the scenes that they showcased in this episode yet again. You saw certain goblins playing chess with one another, playing cards and whatnot, joking around, each with their own distinctive personalities. One of them was real lazy and whatnot, and that little intermission scene, I was just like, yo, that shit is real, and it showcases that ultimately this life and death survival of the fittest, and they had to do what they had to do to survive. Granted that this was definitely steeped in vengeance for our party, though, so that it kind of, in terms of morality, you kind of question certain things, and in terms of, this kind of hierarchy between humans and goblins and things of that nature, and that I hope they dive into that at some point later in the series, as well as the other monsters in this universe. But I really am curious to see where we go from here. But going back to that scene with the snow amongst the tombstones, dude, Haruhiro's speech, that shit was beautiful to me. It was absolutely, the fact that he was like, to me and to all of us, you seem perfect, Manato, but I think it's because we just failed and ignored your flaws. If we had more time, maybe we would have fought more. Maybe our relationship would have changed. And he really desires that, simply because Manato would still be there with them, and they would have grown closer despite potential strife, and noticing that the man wasn't as perfect as they always believed him to be, that he was shouldering more weight, and that they were, actually putting that on, and they realized that far too late. But that scene, dude, the fact that they played, the ED in that moment early, you got the credits running early, Shihoru placing the badges on his grave, and them, and of course, just like Haruhiro says, if Manato was actually there, and he could say something right there, you'd be like, you fools, why did you waste money on getting me a badge? But symbolically, dude, especially mirroring the scene where they refused Renji's gold coin in honor of Manato, I was just like, yo, fucking beautiful. Just the attention to detail in that scene, the slow pacing of it. It kind of dragged a little bit, but I thought it really worked with each person leaving at their own pace. The sound direction with the footsteps in the snow, just the silent expanse of winter. It was beautiful, dude. And then the music in the background. Absolutely superb, dude. Seeing Shihoru break down in front of the grave yet again, Yume comforting her. The scene felt so right, dude. And I forgot to mention something back during the fight with the goblins, dude, because I was going to talk about Ranta in that scene, and how he was kind of dismissive of it yet again. And Yume was chastising him, and I like the little joke about him going commando back in the days when they couldn't afford underwear. But the thing about it is, during that fight, when Yume got stabbed, seeing Ranta charging, he's like, how dare you lay a hand on Yume? He might be trying to step in and then reappropriate the OTP, and that might be that Ranta X Yume's, whole setup, now that I clearly see Haruhiro X Mary being a thing, which is what I want to talk about next. Because seeing them leave, the grave together and everything like that, and walking amongst the snow, and the dialogue that they had, which I really like the depth of the dialogue this episode across the board, but this especially, where they're like, magic can't mend clothes or the painful emotions stored in our hearts. And you see the dialogue between the Haruhiro finally bringing up that he knows what happened with Mary's previous party and in her past, and she's like, I don't care that it's you that's saying this. And just the whole dynamic between the gazes, you can see it in their body language. I'm just like, yo, it's setting up so heavily right now, especially with the nickname that she's giving him asking about that, and right before the fucking bell chimes, man, which I was just like, yo, I knew he was going to say something about the feels that he was starting to develop in that moment before he got cut off. And I'm so curious to see how that develops going forward and how everything plays out. But I really love the symbolism. The bell chiming at that moment was just so stark and harsh compared to the kind of somber nature of the entire scene before that. But seeing that exhale as Haruhiro looks up to the sky, dude, and you see his breath in the cold dissipating slowly, the symbolism in that, dude, and the finality of this episode, the closure that we get from Manato, and the development throughout this arc, the Goblin Slayers finally transcending, finally working together strongly as a party, and Mary finally coming into the fold 100% and seeing them as nakama. Now we can finally start to move on to higher things as far as new monsters, new higher level quests and things like that, and seeing the party continue to grow and bond and mature individually and as a unit. So this series, man, it's absolutely beautiful. Like, I just can't get over it. It deserves more praise than it's getting. Yes, it has its flaws, like with anything, and it could just as well be taken subjectively as a bad thing as much as I see it as a good thing that it took 8 episodes to adapt one volume. But the thing is, the only thing I'm apprehensive about right now is where we go from here. Like, we only have 4 episodes left. How much are they going to adapt in those 4 episodes? How are they going to handle it? I really would love a second core of Grimgar somewhere down the line. I mean, I'm going to have to go to these light novels regardless. I've grown so attached to these characters, to this world, and wanting to know more and see how the story develops that I'm going to have to. But I would really love a second core. But regardless, let me know your thoughts on this episode of Grimgar. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And that track, too, that no-name insert that we got during the battle with the goblins, I forgot to mention that, dude. Because the track during the scene amongst the graves was the ending, Harvest. But that no-name track, that new track that we got when they were going in, during the raid against the goblins was fucking sexy. I love this OST. I love No Name. I need to get the entirety of it. I need to get their music. It's going to be beast. But anyway, let me know your thoughts, and I'm out. Peace.